Hi everybody, Jim Hamilton with Core Resonance. This is the latest video that goes with the latest newsletter. The latest newsletter, the article is called The Power of Thought, so this video is called The Power of Thought. So, what I've been doing lately is expressing a lot about the idea. I've been doing it for a long time. The power of intention, the idea that intention is broader than focus, and that with intention there's a wider bandwidth which allows innate intelligence to be more of a contributor to our reality creating. And recently, I had the opportunity to rethink the idea of focus a little bit, and so I've done that. And in doing it, I've had some revelations, you might say. Now, what that means is I was in a thinking process, and I realized that in my thinking, that my thoughts, no, my antenna, my receptivity was ranging around while I was in thought. And what I discovered was that a thought begins with focus. Now, focus isn't big. Focus starts out with something that you want to put your attention to. And by the way, we're not talking about reactionary thinking. We're not talking about responding to things that are kind of from our repertoire of patterns and habits. I'm talking about thinking, when something comes to you, or you've learned something, or something brings up something that causes you to think about something that's new, or you want to draw conclusions about something you've been exposed to for which you're thinking, that's where your focus comes from. And so as you have focus, you begin as focus, I suspect, and an impetus comes to you, which I would say is an insight. And so as you have this beginning insight and this beginning focus, you kind of start the bare beginnings of a train. And as you allow, or as you receive this insight, another one comes to it. Now we become the guardians of our thinking because we're looking for what we want to think about, or the conclusion we want to draw. And what I'm trying to get at is that as we have our thoughts, we range around receiving information, and we draw thoughts, or the components of thoughts, to us. And so if I can recap what I'm trying to say, because it's not that easy, we start with focus about something we want to achieve, something we want to understand, something we want, maybe we're thinking about a solution. And so we start with a focus, and it's the beginning of a thought, and what happens next is something comes to that and adds to it. We then look at our initial impetus and what was added to it by the cosmos, and now we have two pieces, if you will. And as we think on those two pieces, another piece comes. And as we accumulate three pieces, we think about this, or this is the thought process, and another piece comes. And I'm suggesting that thinking is far more about receptivity than would occur to us. Now, people that are highly creative, they know that creativity comes to them. And I'm suggesting the idea that almost everything comes to us, and our thoughts. Now, again, when we're reactionary or this or that, that's different. But we're in a state of thought, deep thought, or thinking. What I find is that, and what I've noticed for myself, is that as I'm in this process, my senses are ranging about, and they're feeling for different components of this thought that I'm putting together. So this receptivity, this ranging about, there's another word I'm looking for. I'll give you see if I can give you a different analogy. When you jump in your car and drive off, your nervous system goes from being the size of you and your body, in other words, reaching for the door handle and opening the door and going outside, your nervous system stretches and becomes the size of your automobile. I don't know if you've experienced this or realize it. And when you didn't know how to drive, the automobile was kind of intimidating, but as you became familiar with it, your nervous system would extend out to the front of it, it would extend to the back side of it, and you jump in your car, and it's like the automobile would become your body, and then you would take off. And there's actually a lot to be said for that. Now, I used to have a 38-foot diesel pusher coach, and when you jump in that, you didn't just drive off because you got a whole bunch of metal, 28,000 pounds, plus maybe if you're towing a car, you've got 56 feet or 54 feet, whatever it was. And before you don't just jump in and take off. What you do is you settle down. There's a lot of things to do before you drive off. And really what you're doing is you're acclimating to your next activity, which is fitting inside this 38-foot coach plus the 18 feet. Well, so you got about 20 feet behind that with the tow and all that. But and you stretch out to that size. And as you become more comfortable driving a rig like this, what's happened is your nervous system has taken it on, and the nervous system extends itself to the front, extends itself to the back. And it also extends itself forward because as you drive off, you're constantly, I don't want to say anticipating, but you're constantly sending out information, getting feedback about what the road's all about. And when we realize how much our nervous system extends out in front of us, and by the way, the ninth, oh gee, what premise? The ninth to the 10th premise, the map of consciousness, I talk about this idea a great deal, that our nervous system extends out and it receives information back. It's constant. Somebody that jumps in a 747 airplane, a pilot has to be somebody that's capable of a nervous system, and they do that through training and through learning. I'm not going to tell you that everybody can become a 747 pilot because I don't think that's true, because their nervous system's ability to extend to the wingtips and to the tail, and even more so traveling 550 miles an hour, whatever the number is, you have to be able to manage the size of this ship, if you will, and extend forward. Now, true, they have all kinds of dials and gauges and radar and all these different kinds of sensing apparatus that are mechanical, right? But guess what the nervous system does? The nervous system receives all this information from the dials and the gauges and creates what? Conclusions. So what I'm trying to show you is an analogy that when we jump in a car or a motorhome or something bigger, the nervous system, not only does it extend out to that size and your body becomes the size of that vehicle or that airplane, but we also range out in our thinking or in our processing, and we receive back. And when you're thinking, you do exactly the same thing. We start with the impetus of the vehicle, let's say, is focus. And in that focus, that tiny, intimate beginning of focus, something is drawn to that because we start out with something. And what I've noticed with myself is that my mind or there's a word I'm looking for, my discernment becomes available because there's not much point of having a thought about a solution about something and Bugs Bunny cartoon coming in. That ain't much help, now is it? So discernment, when you have a thought, what you do is you draw something in that's a match for the initial thought that you had or the beginning of the thought, and you start creating a train of you adding a piece, the cosmos adding a piece, you drawing, that feels good. By the way, now we're talking about resonance. And so this receptivity that starts out as a piece of focus, a tiny piece of focus for which we have a lot to say with how that focus lines up in the thought process. And of course, the end result of that is what? Something that you create. So what I'm trying to suggest here is that thinking is a lot more about receptivity than most of us think. I think most of us think that thinking simply comes out of our brain and that we have lots of we draw conclusions based on facts and information that we carry. And I'd suggest that thinking is far more about receptivity and discernment capacity, which is like a feeling out, grabbing something, add it to your train of thought. Now, real quick, I want to touch on an idea. The America was founded on fundamental ideas. The Declaration of Independence preceded the American Constitution by, what, 5 or 7 years, 10, 12 years? I know there was Articles of Confederation before the actual Constitution, but it was preceded by the Declaration of Independence. What the Declaration of Independence said was life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Life is the right to exist, but some people don't have that in other parts of the world. Liberty is the right to move about freely. That's supposedly guaranteed in this country, the right to move about freely. And pursuit of happiness means the ownership of something to the exclusion of all others. That's what pursuit of happiness means. Think about Thomas Jefferson and these guys when they wrote this stuff. They were all metaphysicians. They all had very big spiritual components in their lives. And what they understood was that thought is a product of receptivity. Thoughts are our own and in sync with our connection with the cosmos. And so what we do is we ground thoughts, or we become a receiver for thoughts to a combination of the impetus of our focus and our interfacing with the universe or universal forces for which a thought becomes complete. And so what I touch on in this article a little bit is the idea that America was founded on the idea that thoughts come to us, that we are the co-creator in our thoughts, and that of course what comes from our thoughts is what we do with them, which could be our labor or whatever. And this is a fundamental concept in the American people. And what's happened is that we've lost sight of this very basic idea that even in our thoughts, we're interfacing with the cosmos. I don't want to get into the political side of this too much, but as we come back to understand the importance of thought, the part we play in thought, instead of deferring to what someone else says is so. That's where we've lost our way. We need to go back to an understanding of our very nature, that we are receivers, that we are part of the cosmos expressing. The Declaration of Independence understood this. The article goes into it a little bit more. Take a look. I'd like to have some feedback. By the way, I got a new website up. You guys have a great afternoon, day, morning, evening. Wishing you well. Namaste. Thank you.